Just set it up with one picture like that, and then talk, if you want to talk to.
All right, are you ready, Mimi?
Right.
I am ready.
We don't have an engineer.
Good.
Should I put this back
That's right.
there?
Everybody ready?
Ready when you are.
Good evening. I'd like to call the regular Borough Council meeting of September 27th, 2022 to order. This meeting has been properly advertised in the Home News Tribune of April 2nd, 2022, according to Public Law 1975, Chapter 231. May I have a roll call, please?
Council President Zambrana.
Aye.
Councilman Neubauer. Here. Councilman O'Donnell.
Here.
Councilman Peretti.
Here.
Councilman Potter.
Here.
And Councilman Revelinsky. Here. All present.
Great, thank you. Please join me in standing for a moment of silence, followed by a salute to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so we'll start this evening with a presentation. We have our borough planner, Mr. John Barry from Hire Gruel. He's going to make a presentation regarding the rehabilitation plans for the Main Street area. So, thank you, Mr. Barry.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for putting me right up front on the agenda. That's great. So this evening, we're here to follow up on the next phase of the conversation about some, what kind of comes next for the South Main Street area. We had talked a little bit about this in the context of the firehouse property, and what was decided was to pursue an area in need of rehabilitation study, which is basically a toned down or junior version of redevelopment, and the town being familiar with the redevelopment process with the Ford Avenue site over the years. This is a much lower threshold as far as designating an area. There are several criteria set forth in the local redevelopment and housing law, which are the laws that govern this process. And what I prepared and circulated to the mayor and council this evening is a relatively brief report that looks at the conditions for the area as a whole. The area being, let's see if we zoom out a little bit. Sorry, trying to.
John, you could just turn it towards you.
Didn't know how much cord I had. Anyway, the area being generally from Washington Road down to Cooltown Avenue on both sides of Main Street. The mix of properties consisting of some commercial properties, some residential properties, a number of mixed-use properties, and also a fair number of vacant properties at this point that are pretty prominent along that stretch of South Main Street. So the criteria for whether or not an area or a particular property can be designated in need of rehabilitation. In the report on page 3, there are five things that are basically set out, and a sixth over on page 4. And several of them have to do with the age of infrastructure, the age of housing stock. So if either is more than 50 years old, and more than half of the housing stock being more than 50 years old, if there's a pattern of vacancy or underutilization of properties in an area, and if there's environmental contamination can be a factor, arrearage of property tax payments could be a factor. But in the case of the area that we're talking about here, we're really looking at, number one, the age of the housing stock. We have 22 of the 54 properties in the area are strictly residential. Then there's another 10 or so that are mixed-use properties, and of those, nearly all of them are at least 50 years old, so having been built in 1972 or earlier. That stretch of Main Street, I think the average age of the buildings is right around the turn of the century. For the ones that have data available for the year built in the property tax records, the average age was right around 1904, 1905. So obviously everything is quite old. And then as far as the infrastructure goes, the infrastructure in the area certainly dates back to right around 1912 to 1914 when the sewer and water, public sewer and water systems were installed. And while there have been some updates over the years, there are the main infrastructure out there is still quite old and would benefit generally from continued updates and improvements as are set forth in the borough's utility element of the master plan. So those are the basic criteria for the age of the structures, the age of the infrastructure. And then it's also worth noting that there are some prominent properties that are both either vacant or underutilized. We've got some pictures here. So as far as the vacant and underutilized section, we've got, of course, the properties roughly from 123 to 145 South Main Street near the intersection with Coolthau that stretch back to the Christopher Street, Paper Street. And those having been relatively recently demolished, most of those properties. There's old foundation at 63 South Main that's been in that condition for some time. There's a lot that's used generally just for storage of some vehicles as a kind of a tow yard overflow back on Kennedy Drive behind Main Street. And then there's a property at 43 South Main Street that was formerly the liquor store some years back that's been vacant for now probably about 10 or so years. So, individually they're kind of spread out through the area, but there are a number of vacant properties that are right along South Main Street and right in the area that could benefit from some updates, some new activity. And then we also have the Golden Line Inn structure that's currently declared as a unsafe structure based on the postings. I'm not sure what the status of any activity there is, but based on times I pass by and see what's happening there, it doesn't look like a whole lot's going on at the moment. So that's really a summary of the criteria. The way the process goes from here is that the planning board would have another review of what I've discussed and presented, assuming the mayor and council forward that along by resolution. And then after the planning board's had an opportunity to review and offer comment, it would come back to the council for formal action on a resolution declaring an area in need of rehabilitation. That's step one in the process. We're really not at this point talking about anything that will come, anything that is going to be intended for the final use of these properties. This is just to set the stage for what would be a planning process that goes forward from there. I certainly would envision that would involve discussions with the community, discussions with property owners, and an understanding of what everybody's looking to do and to try and figure out how to get some activity along that corridor that is beneficial to everyone the best we can. So, I know when I make these presentations for either a rehabilitation study, redevelopment study, everybody always wants to know what's going to come next and what it's going to look like when it's all done. And the honest answer is that right now we're not there yet, and we don't know. But this process sets the stage for the ability to have those conversations, get down into a review of zoning and land use, and at the very specific parcel level. That's not something you can typically do with a broad zoning plan. So that's what I have for you this evening. Happy to entertain any questions that anyone has.
Anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So John, I know this is a loaded question, but
Yeah.
In your experience, when you present a plan like this, again, just in your experience, how have you seen this process play out?
Sure.
1 year, 5 years, 10 years, ongoing?
Yeah, anywhere in between, because sometimes when this is done, there's one very specific parcel or a specific set of parcels where there's a clear interested party to move a development forward, and there's kind of this hand-in-glove process of figuring out a plan that makes sense. Other times it's conceptual. It's, hey, we would like to see this transformation happen. We're not sure who's going to do it. We're not sure how long it's going to take. So it can vary. And then, of course, you have a slow process every step of the way. We'll have a planning process that necessarily involves public meetings and necessarily involves notice and all the legal things. So that'll take some time. And then after that's in place, the actual shovels in the ground and so forth would involve a planning board application. It'll take some time. And so there are certainly steps to go.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You actually said the question, is who's going to participate? So if you do have a landlord that chooses not to participate, as a borough, we can't take their property at all or force them to, correct?
Sure. So nothing about this will permit the taking of property.
Okay.
So an area in need of rehabilitation is different from an area in need of redevelopment in that way. Two important ways, really. One, there's no ability for eminent domain condemnation, no ability for the town to take any property. And two, there's no ability for the town to offer a long-term tax abatement.
Okay.
So those are two things that are only offered under a redevelopment statute. And those are things that we're familiar with from the Ford Avenue situation, of course. But under an area in need of rehabilitation, there's the ability to create the plan. There's possibility of offering short-term tax abatements, so a 5-year period, that sometimes can help, with smaller rehabilitation kind of activities rather than wholesale clearing and redevelopment that you may see other places.
And again, you answered my next
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Try and help out the residents, with this, maybe, okay, there could be tax abatements.
The statute allows for up to a 5-year tax abatement with a rehab designation. There's no obligation for the borough to necessarily offer that. That may be something that comes down the road later, but certainly not something that automatically happens because of this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does it make us eligible for additional grant funding or anything like that?
Specifically, I'm not sure if there'd be specific grant funding, but there are, sometimes these state programs do have kind of check boxes or incentives. If it's in an area in need of redevelopment or an area in need of rehabilitation, it may score additional points toward different programs. That is the case in some instances, but I'm not sure about anything that's available right now.
And I wasn't even necessarily thinking for the borough to receive, but maybe for the residents, the landlords along there to receive maybe low-interest loan, grant, that kind of thing.
That's something we should certainly look into. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
So I was just curious, lower my mask for a second here, sorry, I had a cold this week. I was just curious as to what this really entails for us. I mean, it sounds great, and it looks like it's us putting pen to paper and saying this is what we want to see, but what sort of leverage do we have? What are our liabilities associated with making a plan come to action? Other than it being a wish list on paper, where does it really get us? We don't have the ability to force private property owners to make improvements or anything, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. Unless
Is
there's...
there also money available from the state for us to be able to undertake any of this? And it sounds like from Margaret's question, that answer is no as far as grant goes, but is there anything else that, other incentives from the state to, whether it's improved parking or utilities or something like that? I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I love that we're taking initiative here and trying to move forward, but I'm just curious as to, how this plan enables us to do anything that we couldn't do already because we're still beholden to private property owners.
Right. So at this point, we haven't gotten to the plan yet, which will, the real benefit from a zoning standpoint, in terms of trying to spur some activity with private property owners, understanding that people always have the right to keep things as they are and say no, as long as they're not violating any kind of property maintenance codes or anything like that, is that we have the ability to target some zoning more specifically. Right now, we have a mix of B2, B3 zone along here. It's relatively restrictive. You end up with what you see more or less. There's a mix of residential single-family homes or small, two-family homes or small mixed-use buildings interspersed with a bunch of vacant lots that haven't seen activity move forward under that current zoning. The idea would be to see if there's a way to enhance the zoning, give some other benefits to encourage some private property owners to redevelop or to develop a vacant lot, consolidate some properties and undertake a development that may not happen otherwise. So that's part of this planning process that will come, is to understand what the borough would like to see there, both mayor and council and residents who come out and participate in the process. Conversations with property owners to understand, hey, are they interested in doing something or not? And I suspect there are some property owners that would be interested in doing something. So understanding what those ideas may be on both sides, or all sides really, and whether there's some tweaks to the zoning that could come out of a redevelopment plan to enable those to happen that don't work right now under the current zoning.
So this is more about, so this is more about a collaborative effort, just to get input from everyone, including all the stakeholders, to figure out what we want moving forward.
That'll be the next step of the process if this is designated an area in need of rehabilitation. And a redevelopment plan would become the zoning for that area. If it is in fact adopted as a redevelopment plan. Like I said, one of the benefits is you can have very specific parcel by parcel or block by block standards in a redevelopment plan, whereas in standard zoning, you have this whole area that's all in the B1 zone. You're not allowed to pick and choose and distinguish between individual properties. It gives you a little more fine control over what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah.
Could we just utilize our existing zoning and designations and kind of nitpick from those, what we
Yeah.
want, or amend those accordingly to what we want block by block?
I think really what we've seen is that, for lack of a better word, things have been a little stagnant along South Main Street. The zoning is in place that exists today, that's existed for some time, and nothing's really happened, and you've seen sort of this slow deterioration where you have some buildings knocked down, now you have vacant lots. Now you have this pattern starting that we want to put the brakes on that, and we want to see some activity start to go back the other way. And under the current zoning, it hasn't happened. So this is a tool to try and move that forward.
In your professional opinion, I'm not going to hold you to this, have you seen these sort of plans and a change in zoning encourage private property owners to do something with their property that they have not done or been willing to do in the past?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I just had a quick question. You said you've seen other towns go through this and everything. The public input portion, have you only ever seen them come to a forum, or have they used things such as surveys or online web forums to submit ideas? Like, what was the best way that you saw the public was allowed to introduce their own ideas to this?
So typically, I think it would involve a mix. The last few years, up until sort of all the lockdown restrictions have kind of ceased at this point, we really had to shift everything to a more online platform. I think that there's no question that would be part of any. It's easy to set up social media with polls, with questionnaires. It's easy to set up a project website. That kind of thing is not a real hurdle technologically or financially. So I would assume that would be part of any outreach, and then there would be some in-person activity too, typically. So I think a mix where people can show up at a forum wherever it may be, but also participate through social media, through a Google poll kind of thing. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? So just to be clear, Mr. Barry, if anyone, right now, nothing's happening, but if anyone has a home in that area, there is no danger to them having to do anything if they don't want to.
Absolutely correct. There is nothing that will come of this process that would mandate anyone do anything or would result in the borough being able to force anybody to do anything with their property. Anything that will happen here is strictly voluntary for any property owner.
And the process would come up with a rehabilitation plan, not a redevelopment plan, correct?
Well, the nomenclature is the same, but it would be under a rehabilitation designation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Right, so to read your conclusion, it says there are several vacant lots that total about 5 acres in that area and represent a significant development opportunity. Based on these factors, it is reasonable to expect that a program of rehabilitation could benefit individual properties and spur the creation of a more cohesive Main Street district that promotes the improvement and reuse of vacant or underutilized parcels and enhances the commercial heart of the borough of Milltown. correct?
Yes.
And so for what you talked about with looking at an individual parcel, so if a property there, the way that it's zoned now may not be zoned to be, let's say, a restaurant, right? So if somebody wanted to buy a piece of property that was there and it was B2, there's no option to serve food, but if the public said, this would be a great idea, we'd love to see that building turned into a pub or a restaurant, that would give the borough or the planning board more flexibility, is that correct?
Correct. So we could, as part of a redevelopment plan, say, this parcel, these parcels, you're allowed to have restaurant, pub, et cetera, those types of things.
But that flexibility doesn't exist with the zoning we have now.
Correct, yeah.
Anyone else?
One more question. For an area of this size, in your past experience, what would you expect the whole process to estimate run for fees and costs associated with trying to implement or at least generate the plan for this area?
So, frankly, the cost is tied to the duration of the process and the amount of the number of meetings that are held. Really tend to be the big drivers. Preparation of a plan with all of the different zoning standards and everything is probably somewhere in the mid-teens, depending on how many meetings there are. It could be up from there. So. That's something that we certainly talk about and revisit at a later date and tailor the project. There's typically for my services, and I'm for most professionals in the field in one way or another, we tailor the level of effort to the budget that's available often. So if there's a desire to have weekly meetings for 6 months, that's going to be a big difference in terms of budget and at level of effort than if you have 1 or 2 meetings and call it a day. So it's all about trying to make sure that we have a balance of getting a good process in with what the borough is comfortable with.
Okay.
Thank you. And for the public, there will be plenty of opportunity as we move along. Right now, the presentation was just to say that we'll have the resolution handed off to the planning board, but we will certainly keep you informed about many other opportunities as we move along with this process.
And we will have a review at the planning board meeting, I believe is scheduled for October 12th.
October 12th.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we will move on to the approval of minutes from the September 12th, 2022 meeting. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion? The minutes?
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Neubauer, second by Councilman Revelinsky. Any comments or corrections?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to abstain because I was not at that meeting.
Okay. All right, so all in favor?
Abstain.
Okay. Next on the agenda is comments from the audience. If any member of the public wishes to speak on any of the resolutions listed, please identify yourself to the clerk and say your name and address for the record. These comments are limited to resolutions listed on the agenda. Seeing none, I'll close audience comments and we'll now go on to bills and claims. Will the clerk please read by title only the bill resolution 215-2022?
Resolution 215-2022 is authorizing the payment of bills, claims, and statements against the Borough of Milltown in the total amount of $966,380.78.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor, I move that the bill list be approved as typed.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Potter, second by Councilwoman Neubauer. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Neubauer?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we have the resolutions. When voting on resolutions, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and having been reviewed by the Borough Council will be enacted by one motion. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member, and if so removed, will be treated as a separate matter. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds. Are any questions, or does anyone want to have any resolution pulled from the consent agenda? There being no request to pull any resolutions, will the clerk please read the consent resolution?
Whereas pursuant to the rules of council, the council may establish a consent agenda for any regular or special meeting, and whereas the Borough Clerk has posted a consent agenda for this meeting. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, that the consent agenda previously prepared by the Borough Clerk be approved without the necessity of having the individual resolutions read by the Borough Clerk.
You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that this resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilwoman O'Donnell. Any discussion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I asked our business administrator if she would do us the pleasure of explaining the tax lien redemption for us on the council as well as for the public.
Okay.
Sure. So what happens is that the borough is required by statute to hold a tax sale every year. So in the borough of Milltown, when we hold a tax sale, it is for delinquencies of taxes and other municipal charges such as utilities from the prior year. Once the tax sale is held, it's a bidding process, and an investor, outside lien holder, will come in and they'll bid, and the successful bidder then obtains a lien on the property. Sometimes in that process, they have to pay a premium for the privilege of obtaining that lien. This premium is monies that are held in escrow by the municipality for a period up to 5 years, and there are some exceptions to that. The property owner, once they actually pay that delinquency off, which happens most times, they refund the lien holder, but the tax collector is the intermediary for the collections. And so in order for us to pay that money out, a resolution is required. So then when you see the premium, it's a redemption of that tax sale certificate, the tax lien, and then the premium would be those escrow, those additional funds that were paid that have to be refunded. The only benefit to the municipality while the tax sale certificates are redeemed with a premium is that we would just earn interest on that, and the interest the municipality gets to keep.
Okay, so we didn't lose any money in this?
No, we actually got paid all the monies that were owed at the time of the tax sale, and then once the lien is on the property, then that lien holder now has an interest in the property, and they most times pay the current charges as well. So yeah, it's a benefit to the town.
Right, so it's not any kind of expense to us, even though it appears that we're laying money out right now.
Correct. We're just reimbursing monies we already collected.
Thank you.
Okay. And any other discussion? Thank you, Jeanette. Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
This is to approve resolutions 216 through 222. Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the certification of the 2021 audit. We have representatives here this evening. Jeanette, would you introduce them, please?
Sure. So from the firm of PKF O'Connor Davies, we have Andrew Hodgelik, and Robert Provost, who will give a brief overview of the audit and entertain questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. So it's going to keep it relatively brief, but I'll certainly take as much time as you want to go through any questions that you may have. Just a quick comment on the timing of the audit process. Every single year, it seems like the last 4 or 5 years at least, the timing's been shifting based on certain pension and OPEB information that we need from the state to put on our audit. This year, the state gave us an extension that has always been June 30th for years and years and years. Now, all of a sudden, it was 8/31. So we did meet that deadline. We filed on August 26th, so we filed timely. And with that, we filed an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you could get in an entity. And furthermore, beyond that, we actually had no findings at all. I mean, and the audit process is about 3 to 4 weeks, pretty much in-house, and we do financial statement prep outside as well. It's a pretty lengthy process. We take a deep dive into internal controls, local public contracts law, we look at grants, we go through all the funds. You know, so we don't take that lightly, so we think we have an entity of no findings. For us, that really means a lot. And, you know, very, very sound internal controls here at this borough. I think we're all very impressed with that. We didn't really have any findings. A lot of times you have maybe one outlier. Everything was really, really clean. Just a couple highlights. So I know everyone here obviously doesn't have our audit, so on the current fund, really, really healthy increase. It increased $430,000 fund balance. Revenues were up 8%, expenditures only went up 6%, so that's how that generated that $430,000. Most of which was a result from collection from taxes. And again, that doesn't mean the levy went up, it was just better percentage of an increase in tax collections. A lot of it was actually, you know, delinquent taxes from the prior year. So that was a really, really healthy collection rate this year. On the water sewer side of things, utility fund, that declined to $136,000, but the revenue was pretty stable. It's just the normal expenditures went up, salaries and, you know, that kind of thing, but still pretty strong. A healthy fund balance of $625,000. I think for this size borough, that's still really, really healthy. The electric utility funds, that had a marginal increase of $83,000. That was really just a spike in some of the electric user charges throughout the year. Except unless Andy wants to add anything, I was going to try to keep it as brief and open up for questions. And
Great, thank you. Any members of the council have questions?
Yes, I have just one or two questions. So when you say that there's no recommendations that were found unnoted, obviously that's like the highest standard. It's like the gold standard. Am I right?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And have you found, since you've become the borough auditors, that it's been getting better and better and better over the last 3 years in terms of timing, collaboration, et cetera?
I think so. I mean, even last year we had, there was a finding that was really had no financial statement impact at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just you know, some I-9s. It's just an eligibility form.
Right.
That they didn't have them. It's just they go back to, they're required since 1986.
Right.
So if you had employees 1990, they're part of fine. But last year, they did a whole collaborative effort to just, everyone's going to sign them. We have them all this year. Because that was the first thought, like, oh, we're probably going to have a couple missing ones again. And
Right.
no, it's just literally every single employee signed them.
Okay, good.
So that was impressive. Like a lot of boroughs don't take it that far. You know, sometimes they'll take our sample and have those people sign them, for example. So to take it that length, but it was pretty good. And again, we had no findings because of that.
Okay,
You know,
thank you.
sure.
Anyone else?
I was wondering if you could go back to a couple of the statistics and go a little bit slower for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
First, about the water and sewer, you mentioned a decrease and then you mentioned an increase. So was that a decrease in expenditures and an increase in collections, or vice versa?
I'm sorry, and so just the water sewer?
Yeah.
So overall, that fund had a decrease of $136,000
In revenue, or?
in fund balance.
Okay.
So revenue was stable. It was almost the same. It was relatively flat. But fund balance decreased because expenditures went up. With the normal, you know, pension, salaries, health, capital outlay. You know, that fund is kind of tough sometimes to keep the expenditures stable.
Do you have an indication there of how much is left in that fund balance at this time?
$625,000.
And for electric, I'm sorry, you had mentioned an increase in about 83,000 in revenue?
Correct. So yeah, so fund balance was pretty much 83,000 increase. So it had a small increase, and that was all revenue driven. That was just mainly because the electric charges went up.
And did we see an equivalent increase in expenditures based on the outlay of funds for salaries, wages, et cetera? Equivalent for water, sewer, as well as electric? Because for our department, that's the same crew, so I would assume it's split in half?
Yeah, so 83,000 would have been a lot higher if it wasn't for those type of charges.
Okay. And then the tax collection, you mentioned an increase of, what was it, over about 400,000?
Well, fund balance increased 400,000,
Okay.
but expenditures again went up. The collection revenue was $1 million. It was $1 million higher this year.
Okay.
And again, that doesn't mean the tax levy went up. That just means the collection rate off $28 million, $29 million, and it goes up a little bit. It could be, you know.
I've got a feeling I know where that money came from, but I'm just curious if you would elaborate to where, if there's a particular source that a lot of that money came from. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, they wouldn't, I don't want to speak for the auditors, they wouldn't know exactly where that came from.
But this is coming from back taxes that
It's
were owed
coming
to us
from
for
tax
several
collection.
years for
Yes.
perhaps a property that has
I
been
can tell
sitting
you
undeveloped.
specifically where it's coming from, so that.
Well, I think it's important for the residents to know. I just don't want to
I
overstep
know,
legally
no.
with something, so.
Those excess funds are coming from arrears charges from the Ford Avenue property. So at this point, they are finally, the property owner is finally making some arrears payments in accordance with the bankruptcy agreement. So that's where a good portion of what Mr. Provost is talking about is coming from.
I think that was maybe 700 or somewhere around there of that piece.
I think it was, probably maybe $500,000.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions for the auditor? Thank you to Mr. Hodgelick and Mr. Provost, and to our CFO, Jeanette Larison, and the Finance Committee for all their work that they've done on that. So that's good news. Good news to have a clean audit. So now, will the clerk please read 223-2022 by title?
Sure. This will be a separate resolution for the governing body certification of the annual audit for 2021.
Okay. You've heard the reading of this resolution. What is your pleasure?
Move that the resolution be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Peretti, second by Councilwoman Newbauer. Any additional discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilwoman O'Donnell? Aye. Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to ordinances. This is the public hearing for ordinance 22-1515. And since introduction, full copies of ordinance 22-1515 are presently posted on the Borough website, on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, and are available at no cost in the office of the municipal clerk between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. Clerk Marler, will you please read the ordinance by title only?
22-1515, an ordinance to amend Chapter 16, Property Maintenance of Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Milltown, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, to regulate invasive plant species within the Borough of Milltown.
May I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing for ordinance 22-1515?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Potter. The public hearing on ordinance 22-1515 is now open to any member of the public who wishes to speak on ordinance 22-1515. Yes, Michael. Good evening. If you'd state your name and address
Evening.
for the record.
Michael Shakarjan, Environmental Commission, 19 Yarnell Avenue. I just want to say that the Environmental Commission worked with Councilman Revelinsky on this ordinance, and we are in support of it.
Oh, great. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thanks for all your work on that, Michael. Anyone else? Okay, so now if seeing no other members of the public wish to speak, I'll ask for a motion and a second to close the public hearing for ordinance 22-1515.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Potter. The public hearing for ordinance 22-1515 is now closed. So now I'll ask for a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 22-1515.
Move that this ordinance be adopted.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilman Peretti. Any further questions or comments from the council?
I have a question. I'm wondering if we have any option to consider adding nuisance species to this ordinance, and perhaps, can we table this to the future and have that added? I don't know what our options are here.
At this point, if you were going to add nuisance species to the ordinance, you'd probably be starting over with a new ordinance. Just so, I mean, the nature of that type of an amendment would be significant enough to start the process all over again. If the council were inclined to want to include nuisance species in such an ordinance, probably be easier to just add that on as another option with another ordinance later.
Okay.
Just, from a practical perspective that way, because if we tabled this and you wanted to do such an addition, you would then just start with the ordinance all over again. This would allow you to at least address invasive species, which is something that I know the Council on the Environmental Commission has been very interested in regulating, and then that would allow you time to explore whether or not the mayor and council wanted to include such nuisance species, and also solicit input from the Environmental Commission for it.
Okay. Thank you.
You got it.
So perhaps the Environmental Commission could take a second look if they so choose.
For the benefit of those here and those there, I was thinking that this ordinance could potentially include things like poison ivy, all the poisons, which are not considered invasives but are considered nuisance. So that's what I was hoping to add.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, where are we? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrano.
Aye.
Councilman Newbauer.
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell.
Aye.
Councilman Peretti.
Aye.
Councilman Potter.
Aye.
Councilman Revelinsky.
Aye.
Motion carries to adopt 22-15-15.
Okay, thank you. Now we have an introduction of an ordinance. Before we get into that, I'm going to ask our Borough Attorney, Mr. Vignolo, to explain why we have the need to re-adopt this ordinance.
Sure, happy to. So, as the mayor and council and members of the public may recall, an ordinance, this ordinance was adopted by the mayor and council back in June 2022. So you're looking at it and saying, why are we doing this again? Well, it turns out that at the time that the mayor and council adopted it in June of 2022, the property owner had filed for bankruptcy. And one of the components of a bankruptcy is a stay on any proceedings against the assets or the property of the bankruptcy estate, of which this property is part. So subsequent to the adoption of that ordinance at a case management conference, the property owner pointed out that the mayor and council were without authority at that time to take such an action because of the stay due to bankruptcy. So in the intervening months, the borough has petitioned the bankruptcy court for the ability to adopt the ordinance again, so to speak. They also offered the bankruptcy court the ability to permit the borough to have an order entered nunc pro tunc, now for then, which would allow our ordinance to essentially be effective from June. The bankruptcy court didn't see fit to allow the borough to do that, but did say you are permitted to adopt the ordinance again. So it is the same ordinance. We are not at liberty to change the ordinance or the plan, because essentially the bankruptcy court's order is you can move forward with what you did previously. So that's why we're here again today, so that we can move forward with that ordinance and the amended redevelopment plan, which is a component of the borough's affordable housing compliance and is something that is required by the affordable housing litigation in the Superior Court of New Jersey that's also being handled right now to satisfy the borough's second and third round affordable housing obligation, which has been outstanding for probably over a decade at least.
Okay.
That's where we stand. So that's why we're doing this again.
So no changes, really?
No changes.
Okay, all right, so let me... There will be no public input on introduction of ordinance 22-15-16. The introduction summary will be published in the Home News Tribune on September 30th, 2022, and second reading, public hearing, and final adoption will be considered on October 24th, 2022. The Planning Board will do its statutory review at their meeting of October 12th, 2022. Full copies of the ordinance will be posted on the Borough website, on the bulletin board at the Municipal Building, and available at no cost in the office of the Municipal Clerk between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m., Monday through Friday. Clerk Marler, will you please read the ordinance by title only?
22-15-16, an ordinance of the Borough Council of the Borough of Milltown amending the redevelopment plan known as the Milltown Ford Avenue redevelopment plan.
May I have a motion and a second to introduce ordinance 22-15-16?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Revelinsky, second by Councilwoman O'Donnell. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Council President Zambrana?
Aye.
Councilwoman Newbauer?
Aye.
Councilman O'Donnell?
Aye.
Councilman Peretti?
Aye.
Councilman Potter?
Aye.
And Councilman Revelinsky?
Aye.
Motion carries to introduce 22-15-16.
Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to council reports. We'll start with the Department of Public Safety. Councilman Dave Potter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No reports tonight, as Council President Zambrana did a great job presenting my monthly reports at the last meeting. Thank you. However, I did have the pleasure in joining our fire department and rescue squad on Sunday in a training regarding electronic vehicles and how to handle them in an emergency. It was an all-day training, and it was well received. They had an outside agency come in, so thank you very much for that. Also, I'd like to indicate it's great sadness to announce the passing of Frank Cherico. Frank was a member of the Milltown Fire Department, Eureka Hose Company, for over 25 years and was a longtime treasurer and foreman. Frank was a life member of New Jersey State Exempt Association, as well as a life member of the New Jersey State Firemen's Association. Frank will be missed by all that knew him. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and the Milltown Fire Department. And the wake is this Thursday at Cray Wheels from 4 to 8 with a fire department service at 7, and the funeral is Friday at 10 a.m. at Cray Wheels.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, thank you. That is sad news, and may he rest in peace, and God bless his family and friends. It's a loss to the fire department and to Milltown, so sorry to hear that. Next, we'll move on to the Department of Utilities. Councilman James Bray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Starting with the water and sewer report, along with the daily pump checks, work orders, and emergency work orders, the department has the following to report. A new hydrant was installed at 56 West Joffrey. Fort Bear had a water main break that was fixed with the help of the DPW. Duke's Root Control did their yearly sewer treatment, covering approximately 8,000 feet. Maintenance sewer jetting took place around town. Hydrant flushing will be coming up in October. Notifications will be sent out prior. Please check Channel 15 and milltownnj.org for additional water and sewer updates. For the electric utility, the substation was checked daily, transformer containment pumps were checked, and the HVAC filters and batteries were also checked. Several branches were noticed in overhead wiring during a patrol, and the branches were subsequently removed. The department members responded to down wire calls to clear phone and cable TV wires from a roadway and sidewalk. Department members assisted the water department running the sewer machine in various areas. The utility department is working with the recreation department in the planning and installation of the safety nets to be installed at Michelin Field. Necessary materials have been ordered. A reminder to please trim vegetation in front of meters. Overgrown bushes limit access, conceal bees nests, and can cause estimated bills. Residents can fill out their monthly reading cards and submit them to the building department, or residents can take pictures of their electric or water meters and send them to the following email address: ahamm@milltownborough.com. That's aham@milltownborough.com. Cards are available at the building office. And lastly, streetlights have been repaired and replaced on several streets throughout the borough. And Mr. Eckert had wanted me to include a little bit of backstory for our streetlights in town. So in 2006, in Michigan, Ann Arbor was the first metropolitan area to install the new high-efficiency LED streetlights to replace their aging high-pressure sodium fixtures. And the most notable obvious feature of that is the white light as opposed to that traditional orange glow. These lights at that time were very expensive, and although low-powered LEDs had been used for electronic devices for many years, the high-powered versions were a new technology at that time. Since 2006, though, there's been rapid involvement in LED fixtures. Around 2009, 2010, when prices were becoming less expensive, Milltown purchased a bulk order of new LED fixtures that had a new efficient circular fluorescent lamp powered by an induction driver. Initially, these were great fixtures. However, with LED technology, some of these fixtures have been already considered obsolete and prices have been continuing to drop. Most of these are still in service, with the original lamps going on 12 to 13 years. Since 2014, Milltown has been purchasing new, even more advanced LED lights exclusively, and they use roughly half the electricity of even those 2009 fixtures, while putting out the same amount of light output. These last 2 to 4 times longer than previous fixtures and have been lowering the department's maintenance costs. So we will be looking forward to continuing future replacements through town. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the Department of Public Works and Recycling. Councilwoman Anna Newbauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple reports tonight, and I will go through them. For just the general DPW report, to start that off, we have, along with all regular daily sanitation collections and weekly bulk collections, the DPW has the following to report. I will touch upon this, I promise, in a letter in a second, but milling and paving will begin in town on or around September 30th in various locations. Notification will follow, and I have one of the notifications up here. The DPW aided the utility department with a water main break on Bayer Ave. The soccer field has been prepped for the fall season, and baseball fields have been prepped for fall ball. Some reminders. Some of this might sound familiar because they're reminders. Milltown Day will be held Saturday, October 1st. Please stop by the DPW booth for giveaways and great info. Leaf bags will be available beginning Saturday, October 8th at the new DPW building at 50 Washington Avenue. Saturdays for pickup will be 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and weekdays will be from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Shredding Day will be held Saturday, October 8th at the American Legion parking lot from 9 a.m. to 12 noon or until the truck is full. Concrete collection will be held the week of October 10th through the 14th. Please call 732-828-2100, extension 187 to be added to the list. Please check Channel 15 or milltownnj.org for DPW updates. We also had a DPW meeting actually right before this meeting, and we did talk about a couple little updates about some ongoing projects, but the biggest update is on the PSE&G gas line replacement project. So due to, I wrote notes, so I tried to parse this out as clear as possible, but if you have any questions about any of this, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Ralph, and we'll try to address them as best as we can. Due to the outside issues, including supply, it is anticipated that the gas lines from the initial phase will be replaced by the end of this year, weather and manpower permitting. Paving for the roads impacted by the initial phase is anticipated to start in spring next year, manpower and weather permitting. A secondary phase of line replacement, that's why there's now an initial phase and a secondary phase, will begin at the start of next year, manpower and weather permitting. It's going to be manpower and weather permitting for all of this, just to be clear. Some of the roads where gas lines were or will be replaced from the initial phase are those that are scheduled to be part of our milling and repavement project. So PSE&G will credit the borough for those roads that we're going to pave ourselves, so the gas lines have already been replaced on those roads. Mm-hmm. And I think it's Ackerman and it's Ackerman, and I think it's just Ackerman. And so we will be getting a credit for this initial phase for those roads, and they'll be paving somewhere else for us because we're paving that. Yep. Maps of the streets included in both the initial and secondary phase will be posted down at Borough Hall, and we're also going to see if we can get it posted online because we have a PDF version just for some folks that can't always make it down to Borough Hall. The DPW committee and CME will keep the roads that are now, we had the initial phase roads, but we will also keep the roads in mind from the secondary phase in mind when we're deciding on projects to submit for grants through the DOT and through our milling and pavement project. So that was what we mostly covered tonight. The milling and pavement project, everyone might have seen, as I said, that there was a notification that would follow There should be a nixle that goes out about it, but we also, if you are impacted by this, you should have also received a letter from Ralph, our Director of Public Works, and it gives the timeline, the approximate times and dates that the roads will be repaved and when, which roads they're gonna be. So from here, I have Riva Avenue from Lawrence Brook Bridge to the far corner of Ford Avenue, and then Ford Avenue from South Street to the property line of 95 Ford Avenue, and Ackerman Ave from South Main Street to the beginning of the Turnpike property. Tentative start date for milling is 9/29. Tentative start date for paving is October 7th, and tentative start date for stripping is October 11th. For Blueberry Drive from South Moats to Riders Lane, milling should start tentatively on September 30th. Paving should start on October 11th, and stripping should start on October 12th. I should have probably wrote the words down instead of reading the dates. So those that are impacted by this will receive this letter, or should have already received this letter, and everyone should also be receiving nixle alerts. Past that, those are the DPW things. We were going to have a Board of Health meeting or try to some point this week or today. Obviously, today we had the council meeting, and also other folks weren't available this week, so we are going to have a Board of Health meeting instead in October. And that is all we have to report. And if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
That's a lot of information all at once.
No one in favor? No. It is. I mean, but that's good news, right?
All good news, because
they're
we're
waiting to mill and pave for, and that's just the first phase. So the Finance Committee has put in to the budget every year for more milling and paving, but it's all going to be dependent on the PSE&G, correct?
Absolutely. We're keeping an eye on the different roads. Like, they give us a lovely whole list with a map, and those maps that we've received for them,
Right.
well, at the minimum, Ralph said he could get them posted down here, and if we can, we are going to try to get them posted online.
And this milling and paving, though, is in-house with the help of the county, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's good news, yes. I remember talking to people from Blueberry Drive for the last couple of years that have been, complaining about potholes and things like that. So the fact that we're finally getting started and going around and taking some of the most troubled areas first is really a good thing. So thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. And thanks to Ralph, too.
Yes, super big thanks to Ralph, and super big thanks to CME for keeping us updated on all this, and thank you to Rich and Margaret for sitting down very last minute with me to go over the updates.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have the Department of Recreation. Councilwoman Margaret O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of reports for everyone tonight. There was no library board meeting in September. The next one will be the second Tuesday in October, which actually coincides with this meeting, but it takes place at 6:30 in the library. All the activities and events continue, something almost every day. I wanted to highlight two new programs for you. October 4th's Pollinator program at 3:30, and on October 27th, there's a new telescope night at 7 o'clock. But I'm going to show this. I know you won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to tell how filled in the calendar is. There's something always going on at the library. The Recreation Advisory Committee met on Wednesday and always meets on the third Wednesdays at 7. We talked about a whole lot of topics, new programs for adults and for children. We talked a lot about Milltown Day and encourage our residents to stop by. There'll be a lot of excitement with what everyone's doing, but recreation is bringing some extra excitement to the party. The committee is looking for new members. There'll be some new after-school programs. The pickleball and basketball courts have been repaved at Michelin Park, and there was a lot of talk about Michelin Park in general, especially about the field, and in the department update, I'll have more information on that. There have been some challenges with the repaving of the Pardon tennis court, so our recreation director himself went out there and did some pulling up and peeling of the old surface, and we'll be looking forward as soon as we can to get the new surface down. We covered information about how the pool went. It recently closed for the season, and we're looking at getting all the facts and figures in, but talk generally about membership, staffing, and ideas for an even better pool experience for next year. The department report. Okay. The telephone poles were referenced in the DPW and utilities reports, I think. And those telephone poles are going to be installed as part of a new netting protective system at Michelin Field. So the telephone poles have been not only ordered, but I saw them there on site. They have to be set. They get dropped in something like 7 or 8 feet deep into the ground so that they are stable to hold this netting up. That park is currently closed to batting only. So you'll see snow fencing remaining only at the pitcher's mound and at the backstop. So I know that we have some, I see Little League logo, so I'm pretty sure we have a Little League dad here who's interested in that information. So the snow fencing that closes off the left field area and the locks that are on the, not right field, but right side of the fields will be removed tomorrow. So I'm happy that we've made some progress there. Other park improvements include new basketball surface at Albert Avenue, new roof on both of the pavilions there, the new pickleball surface that I mentioned at Michelin, and it all looks like asphalt blank right now, but line striping will be occurring on all the new surfaces soon. In terms of fall sports, soccer and instructional has instructional activity has started. I already mentioned Milltown Day, and but I didn't mention this about Milltown Day. A special visitor and a few cool giveaways. So I think that's everything about recreation. And then historic preservation, our committee meets on the 4th Thursdays at 6:30 on Zoom. Also look for this committee presence at Milltown Day. In the future, starting in January, the committee will be posting agendas and meeting minutes on our webpage, and you can check out our webpage on the Borough site. Our discussions at the meeting included a lot about what John Barry spoke of today, rehabilitation versus redevelopment and what all that means. We talked about Ford Avenue and what it is exactly that the borough gets to approve. And the committee still wants to partner perhaps with either the library or recreation on taking a historic walking tour, making that available to the public. The library already does a walking club, and it seemed like a nice recreation activity potentially, and they're looking forward to that partnership. But the biggest announcement from the Historic Preservation Committee is the addition of a family member. Randy, Ruth, and Tracy Youngster welcomed a baby boy just this week to their family. Randy is the chair of the committee, and he's been giving us updates at previous meetings, so we're all very excited to hear that news and congratulate him and his beautiful family. And I believe that concludes my reports.
Great, thank you. Congratulations to Randy. That's
Madam
exciting. That's happy news.
I just have a quick question for Margaret, because we've been getting a lot of questions. Oh, it's good that the poles and the netting, is there an estimate of when that's going to be installed?
So if you had asked us prior to looking at the landfall for Hurricane Ian, we would have said 2 to 3 weeks. The netting is coming from Florida, so it's indeterminate, but we are trying to keep that project on schedule and get that open as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to see so many new programs. It's great that the Recreation Department and the Advisory Committee are trying new things. And I saw adult kickball kind of came through.
Yes. Will we see the mayor at adult kickball?
No, I'll volunteer for adult dodgeball. It's hard.
and the opposite team.
What about cornhole, Mayor?
Back in the Joyce Club.
What about cornhole, Mayor? Will you be signing up for that?
Sure, what?
What about cornhole? Will you be signing up for that?
Yeah, well, I don't want to brag. No. I can retire the champion. Thank you, Margaret. All right, now we have the Department of Environmental Health and Social Services, Councilman Rich Revelinsky.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to double down on what Councilwoman O'Donnell had said. In fact, I thought we had an absolutely fantastic recreation meeting this past week. We had members of the public come down, and we really looked at some plans moving forward for the future and how to improve our programs. It really was a good meeting and inspiring. As you can tell, I'm a little under the weather, so I'm going to keep this one short. Revitalization Committee, this weekend is October 1st. That is Milltown Day. Thank you to all the members of the committee who have been working hard and all the borough staff for their continued efforts. We look forward to making this a great day for Milltown. For the Environmental Commission, our meeting is 7:30 tomorrow night. And I know that conflicts with the debate or forum for our candidates, so don't worry, we'll have both meetings. That's pretty much it. I know we've been catching up on some things here, and Councilman O'Donnell, I know we're happy with the invasive species ordinance, and the nuisance species was part of this originally. We decided to kind of push that off to get this one in the books first. So we'll be working on that next, hopefully.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, and thanks again to the Environmental Committee. I know you've worked a long time with the species, so I'm happy to see all of your work come to fruition with this ordinance this evening. Next, we'll move on to the Department of Finance, Administration, and Planning. Councilman Phil Zambrown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Don't really have a finance report at this point other than to just thank again Mr. Provost, Mr. Hodgelik, for being here to field any questions that any of the council members or the public might ask. Again, Jeanette, thank you for, just making the audit just zoom along year after year, faster and faster. Ford Avenue, I can't really add anything more to that discussion other than what Mr. Vignola already said earlier about amending the plan, re-amending the plan that was already put forth. And I have a quick senior center report. This was submitted by Debbie Cuddy, our director at the senior center, where she says that all our staple programs, which include billiards, strength training, Spanish, bingo, yoga, line dancing, arts and crafts, men's and women's clubs, and walk aerobics, continue to run monthly. The Senior Center now offers a game table for seniors to enjoy at the Senior Center. Some of these games include Scrabble, playing cards, checkers, Connect Four, Milltown Monopoly, and Mahjong. There is a hope to have game tournaments for those participants moving forward. When you have a tournament, you have a prize as well. Tomorrow, September 28th at noon, there's a trip scheduled for TGI Fridays, Hobby Lobby and Marshalls in North Brunswick. On Thursday, September 29th at 9:30 a.m., there's a trip scheduled for the Amish Market. Sign-up sheets to attend activities are posted on the bulletin board located in the side entranceway. As a reminder, the Senior Center is open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., especially now that summer hours have ended. Again, always like to say this and bring this up every single time. Seniors do not have to join the Milltown Senior Center Club or to attend activities at the Senior Center or to arrange doctor's appointments or other trips such as for food shopping by use of our vans. If anyone 60 years of age or older is interested in attending any of the programs and needs more information, they can contact Debbie Cuddy, 732-296-0681, or you can email Debbie at dcuddy@milltownborough.com. And as always, any additional information can be found at the milltownnj.org site and navigating to the Senior Center pages. And that concludes my reports.
Great, thank you. Lots of fun stuff going on over at the Senior Center. Great. All right, next we have our administrator report. Jeanette, anything this evening?
I have no report other than to say everyone keep Florida residents in their thoughts and prayers the next 24 hours.
Thank you. Engineer, Mr. McClellan?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just a few items tonight. First, to report that we're pleased that Hague Avenue and Patina Avenue improvements are underway. Drainage first, then curb, sidewalk, and replace installation. So we'll keep you posted. Any residents have any concerns, we've issued notices, so please call us and we will take care of any kind of comments or concerns you have. Clayton Court improvements have been scheduled for bidding. Advertised is on 30th. I think that's this Friday. Bids will be received on October 13th. We'll have a report back to the borough, hopefully for award at your October 24th council meeting.
Great.
And lastly, the water system improvements, field surveys have been completed, base mapping is underway, and preparation construction plans and technical specifications are being worked on at this time.
Great. Great.
That's all I have today.
Any questions for the engineer? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. McClellan.
My pleasure.
Mr. Vignolo, anything for the attorney report?
Just one thing. At our last meeting, Councilman Revelinsky inquired about the political sign ordinance in the borough. There was a question over what the period was, and our ordinance provides for signs to be displayed for periods not exceeding 30 days, and they have to be removed within 7 days after an election. So there was a question over whether the mayor and council might want to revisit that period in light of how our current election process has been working. That is the information. If anybody has any questions or wants to explore an amendment to do that, just give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can certainly start to put together something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right, now we go on to mayor's comments. So I have a few announcements. The clerk is still looking for a few poll workers. Please contact Mimi as soon as possible to get on the list and set up for training. Poll workers receive $300 per day and $30 for training. So you need a few more, right, Mimi?
I do.
Okay, all right. A reminder also that the next meeting in October is again on Tuesday night. It's Tuesday, October 11th, due to the Columbus Day holiday. And the other thing to note is we have Milltown Day coming up. I look forward to seeing you all there. It's always a great day for Milltown organizations. Lots of activities going on, one of which you can find more about is the Milltown Scarecrow Contest. So that's the Education Foundation. You can check their website for info regarding the Scarecrow Contest. I have volunteered to be a judge. So it's sponsored by the MEF, but supported by Milltown Day. The Oktoberfest event is coming up on October 8th, which is another great event sponsored by them. And it's also by the Borough DPW and Revitalization Committee. So once after Milltown Day, we'll have fall holiday planters and local decorations. So we'll move on from our beautiful summer flowers that have looked so pretty, and we'll start to be a little more fall festive as we move into October. So lots going on in Milltown over the next few weeks, so we'll look forward to seeing everyone out at all those great events. Now we'll move on to old business. Does any member of the council have any old business to bring before us?
I didn't know there.
Yes.
Last week, geez Louise. Last meeting, I had brought up potentially working with the DPW to find roads for future instead of just, one of the other things that we touched on our meeting tonight, and Mr. McClellan pointed out that we originally were thinking of doing an inventory of all of the roads, but he suggested holding off on that because we're putting so many big projects on the line right now, and waiting until those projects were done to do the inventory, to have a more accurate inventory, because there's so much happening right now.
With the PSE&G in it.
With PSE&G, with the DOT grants that we have and that are currently being worked on, and with the milling and repaving.
Okay, that's good.
So, yes.
Good. Yeah, so for those in the audience, when you drive around town, you see that little strip, the darker strip, that's where PSE&G has come and already done the line, right, Mike? So that's where eventually it will be paved, but there's going to be a whole plan and process to do that, right?
Paving for that should start, making sure everybody dates right. Paving for those roads should start in the spring of next year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else have any old business? Seeing none, I will close old business and move on to new business. Does any member of the council have any new business to bring before us this evening?
Just at this time, Madam Mayor, I'd like to note, so that Mr. Samwell would be able to come up if he wanted to say some things. I know he sent an email out back in September. Earlier this month, Mr. Samwell is now the newly appointed president of the Milltown Little League, and he had a couple of requests for things to do with the park, so he asked that I bring that up since he brought it up earlier, and they're kind of on a timetable, so I just wanted to throw it out there now so that we're all a little prepared.
Bobby, you can go first in audience comment. So wait 1 second. Just let's finish, make sure there's no other new ones, and then we'll get you right up, okay? Anyone else have any council comments?
Council comment? Or
New business, sorry. New business. Okay.
My only other thought is, I know, I think we all received an email in regards to honoring Mayor Bradford, and I was wondering if we could start working towards putting pen to paper to commemorate the work that she did. And I know we have a park named after her, but some of the folks were looking for a little bit more in depth. And
that was one that was one gentleman, and immediately after Mayor Bradford passed, I spoke to the family, her daughter in particular, and said, what would your mother have liked? We honored her afterward. We honored her, the fire department, the rescue squad, all the first people in Milltown did. Her daughter indicated that she would like to have a scholarship because her mother would really like to encourage young women to enter public service. Unfortunately, the borough can't sponsor that, but I said I would certainly work on that. And there is, the school, you can just give them money and do that. You can't come to the borough and do that. So I had reached out to the Lions Club and Chamber of Commerce, and I don't know where that stands. I believe that the Lions Club was planning on planting a tree in Gloria Bradford Park, and the only other thing that her daughter said that she would like would be to have some sort of placard on South Street where she lives. So that's something that I spoke to Ralph about. When and if that will happen, I'm sure it will, but it was just one particular gentleman who doesn't even live in town anymore, who seems to think that we're not doing enough to honor her. That's not the case. We respect every public servant that has served here on the council and as mayor, so there's no disrespect there. It might not be on his timeline, as I said in the response email, but we're taking care of it. Some things the borough can do, others private groups have to do. So we no pen to paper, but the things are in the works.
No, and I appreciate the response, because I know you've been working on issues for some time and trying to address that. So.
And now I'm done with him because he got a little rude that it wasn't his timeline. So if he wants to come to a meeting, I'd love to see him. But otherwise, the borough is doing what we feel and what the family has asked. And if somebody doesn't like it, there's only so much that we as a governing body can do, right? Okay, so now we will move on to audience comments. I'll read my spiel and then I'll get you up here. Okay. The public comment portion of our meeting is to allow the public to bring to the council's attention their concerns or comments. The council will respect the public's time by refraining any comment until the speaker has finished. It should be further noted that public comment portion of our meeting is not structured as a question and answer session. If a member of the public has specific questions they seek answers to, an appointment can be made with the appropriate office during regular business or office hours. Please state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium. So now I will open audience comments. Mr. Samwell, you want to go first? Thank you. And congratulations on being president.
Bob Samwell, 8 Royal Court. I'm here on behalf of Milltown Little League. I sent an email out in regards to some possible additions to Field 2 at Borough Park, since we have those beautiful new lights now. I was hoping to improve the experience for the kids. A scoreboard along the third baseline by the light down there. A possible temporary fence that could be taken down at a day's notice if there was any other events that were going on that need to be removed for. And also a building, an outbuilding, where the brown shed currently sits, behind Major Field and on the first base side of Field 2. I was just looking for some...
Who did that email go to?
All the council members, the mayor.
Did I get it?
And business administrator.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I must have missed.
It's okay. I was just looking for some information because I would like to have some new additions by start of the spring season, opening day. So to get the ball rolling on certain projects.
I remember talking to Doug about your predecessor for the scoreboard, is that still plan on being from the Milltown Little League for that?
Yeah, so all of these projects, I should have prefaced that, we're planning on financing through Milltown Little League and the money that we've raised for fundraising, so it wouldn't really cost the taxpayer of the town
So you're
any
just
money.
basically looking for coordination with the grounds to where to put it in?
Yeah, approval, I didn't want to just go ahead and, do these things without the approval of the town, the council, and,
But, so you're planning on purchasing all of it, or you have?
yes, no, we haven't purchased anything yet, but, yeah, the scoreboard, a temporary fence, and the possible outbuilding.
Bob, when's opening day approximately?
It's usually the first Sunday, or Saturday, I'm sorry, in April.
In April, yeah, so
Yeah.
supply chain, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes like a good 6 to 8 weeks for a scoreboard to come in, and as,
Okay. So I think we'll have to get some more information and get back to you on the timing or.
Right, so I think one of the things that they're definitely gonna need is dimensions, all the details, the specs of whatever you wanna construct and where you wanna put it, on the field. So it definitely would need all
So
of that information.
who can he contact directly?
Do you want to
Well, his
coordinate
vendor,
it through
whoever they're gonna
recreation
No, I mean
or
with-
through
from the borough.
DPW or?
I would say that everything would get forwarded, to the clerk, and then from there, we'll, work with the other department
Okay.
heads, and then come back to council. So, I know that you have ideas for what you'd like to do, but do you have vendors, who you're gonna buy it from? Do you know exactly, what it is that you are going to do?
yeah, I mean, we have a plan, so you would like me to put that in writing and send it to?
Exactly, but so you have your scoreboard, the dimensions, does it need electricity, how all of that's going to work?
Yeah,
And
we added 110 on the pole on the third base side, and, for future for a
Okay.
scoreboard, so that's already existing there,
Okay.
but, yeah.
Yeah, and an outbuilding, the dimensions of that, just the details of what it is. So once you partner with a vendor, just to get an idea on cost, I'm sure you're gonna have to come up with the specs. I think that should be shared with the clerk. Put it in writing exactly what you're doing, where you want them to go, and this way the governing body, as well as, we could just speak to Ralph too, just to get his input for buildings and grounds.
So,
So the sooner you get it to us, the sooner that, it could go before council formally, and then you'll have your answer.
Okay. Then out of curiosity, would it benefit then to have a meeting on site just to go over some of the layout? I mean, sometimes it's easier to go through things when you're on site and look at maybe where a fence or goalposts or things like that would go, just this way before we put it in writing. And then also, what sort of, I can't stand talking through this mask, I'm sorry. What sort of action would the borough then be taking? Would it be like a resolution to permit the Little League, or is it an ordinance?
It all comes
or-
down to permitting, construction on a borough property.
Okay.
And Peter, if you have anything to add?
Well, my question is, okay, the Little League would like to put a scoreboard in.
Correct.
They want permission to own a scoreboard on the borough's property, they want to donate a scoreboard that they're going to utilize on the borough's property. And it doesn't matter either way, it's just a question of how we're gonna slice it up, because at the end of the day, if it's a question of who's responsible for maintenance, who's responsible for making sure nothing happens to it, who's going to insure it, things like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a donation, because like you said, it would be on borough property, and it'd be
And that's-
for anybody to use.
And if you want, if you guys want to reach out to me or copy me on what you're doing, I'm happy to give input as we move along to make sure the process goes smooth and we don't get to the end and anybody has a hang-up.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, so do that, and then it'll come back before us as soon as we can.
Bobby, as a former board member, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with, so.
Anyone else? Michael? Good evening.
Hi again. Michael Shakarjan, 19 Yarnell Avenue, Environmental Commission. As usual, we'll be at Milltown Day this Saturday.
Good.
We're hoping for decent weather. And right next to us will be the Lawrence Brook Watershed Partnership table.
Great.
So we're coordinating together. And in addition to that, I've had a conversation with Ralph Jezanowski. And so Public Works and Environmental Commission are co-hosting an electronics recycling, as we usually do, up at 85 Washington Avenue. Ralph has some pallets up there that we'll lay out, and that will be for Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Okay, and I have a flyer, and I guess I can give a copy to,
The clerk?
I can give a copy to the clerk, and I can give a copy to Russ.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can get it, yeah, we can put it up here, and you can put it on channel 15 or whatever you see. Great.
Okay.
Okay. Speaking of the electronics, isn't shredding coming up here?
October 8th.
October 8th. So if you have any-
October 8th in the Legion parking lot.
So we
Sorry,
have
I think
electronics
we're-
recycling, and we have
Yep.
county-sponsored shredding coming to Milltown on the 8th.
Yes, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon or until the truck is full.
Okay, great, that's a good, so both, two good things, thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you to the entire committee for that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes, Mr. Einbein?
Good evening, Russ Einbinder, 152A North Main Street. Happy New Year to those that celebrate along with me, and
Yeah,
Happy
Happy New
Navratri
Year.
to my friends that celebrate that, and it's a good day for a lot of Hindus and Jews today. I want to just remind people that tomorrow night in this room, we're going to be having our council candidates forum. It's going to start live at 7:30 p.m. on TV. Be my guest, be the guest of our committee, of course, to come here like anytime after like 6:45. If you want to fill out one of the question sheets to be asked of the candidates, you kind of need to get here at least that half hour or 45 minutes before we start, so it can be reviewed to make sure it's an appropriate question. And if we can fit it in, of course, we'll ask the question. All right, once again, it's 7:30 tomorrow night, and after that, we will be repeating it. Probably to some people, it'll be a good thing, other people might be ad nauseum, but we'll be repeating it a lot on the TV and on the YouTube channel. And if you want to find out who's running and what they're about, perfect time to do it. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes? Welcome back, Mr. Ligotti, nice to see you.
Nick Ligotti, 9 Janet Court. It's nice to see everyone tonight. I have 3 things, if you would allow me.
Sure.
I think the first one might be for Mike and Councilwoman Newbauer. I apologize if I didn't hear the whole thing.
That's fine.
It's the PSE&G markouts. If I'm looking at it correctly, they're marking out 2, the existing line and where the new line is going to go. So they're abandoning the old line, leaving it in the ground, and they're putting in a new one? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And will they be repaving all of what they do, or just certain parts of Milltown?
They'll be repaving anything they disturb, it's generally from the center line of the pavement to the edge line.
Okay, because the new, where they're putting the new pipe is further towards the middle of the street,
Right.
obviously, because they're abandoning.
That's correct.
So just that one piece is, and it's just going to look like that straight little narrow line through all the streets.
But generally from the curb to half the center line of the road is where they're doing.
Okay.
They have to do at least half of it.
Except on roads like Ackerman. So since we're repaving Ackerman, that half of the road is going to get
That's what
put
I
onto
missed.
another-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. My second question might be for Peter.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Vignolo, I'm sorry.
Okay, Nick.
Does the borough still have the option to sell property and deed restrict it, rezone it through the proper boards and committees? Is that still an avenue that can be explored?
To sell property and deed restrict it. You can sell property with restrictions, but obviously it's going to affect the marketability, but I mean.
But it's an avenue you can
It's
explore.
something that can happen.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, if you would allow me, I don't know who the council liaison is to the cable TV committee.
Just throw it out there. and we'll-
Councilman Peretti, I know that there's the forum tomorrow. I probably have a lifetime ban from attending, but all of you have been up there before, and I just wanted to make sure that there are rules that go along with this forum, and that, in particular, there's 2 rules. One is that you cannot excessively extend the amount of time that you're answering a question. And the second one that is prominent is that you cannot personally attack a candidate. I would just like to make sure that those 2 rules get enforced tomorrow.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm well aware, the governing body doesn't control that. That's, so.
Well, no, they report to you.
Yeah, but, you know, we're not going to get into the running of the forum here. You know, it's not something that we can do a resolution, so, you know, I would say that the rules, you know, should and would be followed, but it's nothing that the governing body can control.
Well, no, just that the liaison can
I can make,
liaison
I
to
can make note of
the
it, but
moderator
yeah,
that he should be able to enforce those rules.
like, yeah, Madam Mayor said, so that is political, and we don't do that here. So I know this came up last year too, but yes, as liaison, please come to me, and I can pass that along. But right, as Madam Mayor said, we're not going to get involved with the running of political things.
Nothing political, I'm just making sure that the rules are getting followed this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments this evening? Seeing none, I will close audience comments and move on to council comments. Does any member of the council have any final comments this evening?
I have one.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot one thing from my Recreation Department report, and it was to tell everyone to keep on top of all the park improvements by visiting the park improvements part of the recreation webpage on the Borough website. Sorry, I
So you
forgot to
mean
include that.
you mean like the repaving and the,
Yeah, there'll be updates about, and pictures to see what's being resurfaced, striped, you know, all the additions and improvements will be
Cool.
detailed in words and pictures.
yeah, I'm gonna have to drive by Albert Avenue to see the gazebos sticks. I've heard about that for years. Really?
Really good.
Yeah, that's been something. And pickleball? Yeah, that's, we've heard about people wanting that for a long time too, so I'm gonna have to get on that. Learn how to play.
So, of course, we want people to visit in person, but they can definitely visit the website to get a first-hand look.
That's good. Anybody else on the council have any last comment?
Madam Mayor, just from me, as many of you know up here, the general public probably does not know that this summer I took on a new position, and with that position, it's for employment, it's quite a task, a boatload of activity. So unfortunately, for the month of October, I will not be here during the first council meeting. I will actually be overseas in Finland for the first 2 weeks, and then when I return, I will have to be in Toronto. Mr. Vignola, I'll be speaking with you after the meeting. I have some questions about being able to call in from overseas. I know when you're within the country or within the United States, it's no big deal, but if I can call in, I will, but I just wanted to give everyone the heads up and let the residents know that I'm not just slacking off. That unfortunately, work calls, and I got to pay the bills first.
Right,
So,
right. Well, congratulations. All the
Thank you.
best in your new role. Thank you. Yeah.
Just one last thing. It's getting towards the end of the year. I just want to remind everyone that's interested in participating in the committees and the task force and all that we have going on in town, that you need to fill out, I forgot the name of it.
Citizen leadership.
Citizen leadership form. I had it all planned in my head and then it just went boom, 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 boom. But just please remember to fill that out before, are they due by?
Well, we only actually need, if someone new is interested.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it's best to have them by December 15th, because to be put on to a resolution for our January 2nd meeting, it's best that we have time to review that.
And there are open spots on some of the committees.
Absolutely.
There are some.
And you can learn more about them at Milltown Day,
That's
October
right.
1st.
There. Good advertising.
So yeah, that's just my PSA that I like to start at the end of the year to remind people.
Madam Mayor, I just want to congratulate the borough on a very successful audit.
Yep.
And also, too, congratulations on well-deserved promotions that went through tonight.
Oh, good, good. Yes, thank you. Yep. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a
Second.
motion by Councilman
Jeez.
Potter, second by Councilwoman O'Donnell. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you all. Good night.
No, the